Honorable viewers, I welcome all of you to my YouTube channel Department of English. Today's topic is the way of the world summary. So let's get started. The Way of the World by English playwright William Congreve premiered in London in 1700. Considered one of the best restoration comedies, it is still performed occasionally today but was controversial in its time due to its bawdy themes and sexual explicitness, which had fallen out of favor in its time. Focused on the adventures of a pair of lovers, Mirabelle and Melamed. The story follows their plan to marry and the many steps they must take to obtain the approval of Melamed's better aunt, Lady Wishfort. At the same time, supporting characters, including friends, servants, and others, are engaging in their own schemes and affairs. Like many restoration comedies, the play serves as a satire on the culture of its time. Its themes include criticism of high society and the niceties of courtship, as well as the nature of love and the role of money in marriage. In many ways, the way of the world is about the clash of the old with the new. Despite its sexually explicit themes, it is considered a more nuanced play than many others in the genre. A five-act play. Act 1 begins as Marvel and his friend Fainal have just finished playing cards. A footman arrives and tells Marvel that his servant, Whitewell, and Lady Wishfort's maid, Foible, have just been married. Marvel tells Fainal how much he loves Melamed, and Fainal encourages him to marry her. However, Marvel learns that if Lady Wishfort marries, he will lose a large chunk of Melamed's inheritance. The only way to get this money is if he manages to convince Lady Wishfort to consent to their union. Act 2 begins in St. James Park as a Fainal's wife, known only as Mrs. Fainal, and her friend Mrs. Marwood are talking about their hatred of men. Fainal arrives and accuses Mrs. Marwood, with whom he is secretly having an affair, of being in love with Marable, which is true. Meanwhile, Mrs. Fainal, who is Marable's secret lover, tells Marable that she hates her husband. It's a very difficult to understand this poetry. However, continue. She plots with him to trick Lady Wishfort into giving her blessing to the wedding. Melamed soon arrives, angry about an altercation between Marable and her aunt the previous night, and tells Marable she disapproves of his plan. As she leaves, Waitwell and Foible arrive, and Marable compares with them about his plan to trick Lady Wishfort. The scene shifts in Acts 3, 4 and 5 to home of Lady Wishfort. Wishfort is a lonely woman and Foible encourages her to marry Sir Rowland, who is supposedly Marable's uncle, so Marable will lose his inheritance. However, Sir Rowland is actually Whitwell in disguise. The plan is to trick Lady Wishfort into a marriage that is illegal due to bigotry laws. She will become a social disgrace for marrying a servant. Mirabel will then offer to help her out of the marriage in exchange for her consent to his marriage. Mrs. Fainall and Foible discuss this plan. Mrs. Marwood overhears them and decides to tell the plan to Fainall, who plots to steal his wife's money and run away with Mrs. Marwood. Mirabel and Millamant, both strong, wild, and determined, discuss the terms of their marriage and what they expect, showing the depth of their love for each other. Mirabel proposes to Millamant, and with Mrs. Fennell's encouragement, she accepts. Mirabel leaves just as Lady Wishfort arrives. Lady Wishfort tells Millamant she wants her to marry her nephew, Sir Wilful Whitwood, who is visiting from the country. Lady Wishfort receives a letter telling her of the Sir Roland plot. Sir Roland steals the letter and accuses Mirabel of trying to sabotage the wedding. Lady Wishfort agrees to sign a marriage contract with Sir Roland that night. In Act 5, Lady Wishfort has discovered the plot and Fainall has had Whitwell arrested. Mrs. Fainall tells Foible that all now know of her affair with Mirabel. Lady Wishfort appears with Mrs. Marwood, who is in her good grace for exposing the plot. Fainall appears and uses the knowledge of Mrs. Fainall's affair and the contract to blackmail Lady Wishfort into transferring her money to him. Lady Wishfort offers Mirabel her consent to the wedding if he can save her fortune and honor. Mirabel calls on Whitwell, who produces a contract in which Mrs. Fainall transfers her property to Mirabel. This cancels out his blackmail attempts and Mirabel tears up the contract as soon as it is done. Having neutralized Fainall's blackmail attempt, Mirabel receives the blessing of Lady Wishfort and is free to marry Millamant with the full inheritance. William Congreve was an English playwright and poet of the Restoration period, considered a great influence on the comedy of manners genre. He wrote 5 plays in his life: The Old Bachelor, The Double Dealer, Love for Love, and The Way of the World. All comedies as well as the tragedy The Morning Bride. All deal with similar themes of secrets, marriages, and inheritances. He was politically active, serving as an ambassador to Jamaica under King George I. He was an accomplished poet and also translated the works of classic poets Homer, Juvenal, Ovid, and Horace. His work is still taught and studied in drama courses in the English-speaking world. So that's all about The Way of the World summary for the timing. Thanks for your patience hearing. Bye bye.